Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. Thank you for joining. We'll be starting in just a moment while we get everyone connected here and online. So we'll begin in just a moment. All right. Thank you again for joining. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host today, Andrew Parlett. And today we'll be looking at a blueprint to flexible and high performance printing from cloud desktops. And we'll go through an array of different environments that we'll look at. Again, really focusing on how to really modernize your printing infrastructure and take scenarios that might be causing problems or delays, productivity issues, maybe just a hassle, and really look at ways to make that much higher performing. And we'll look at a few different scenarios with blueprints and demos, including a healthcare environment that uses virtual desktops, a hybrid work model, and a cloud desktop printing. So we'll look at different types of environments besides just cloud, but kind of the full range of environments you might be working in terms of hybrid environments and scenarios. And then certainly at the end, we'll kind of recap that, take a look at what those main tenets are in executing a solution with a modern print management. And then there'll certainly be a time for questions as well. So if at any point you have a question about one of the topics we're covering, please go ahead and enter that into the audience chat in the program. And we'll have a time at the end, but if I see questions coming in during the presentation, I'd be happy to address them as we go through. So like I said at the beginning, my name is Andrew Parlett. I'm the CTO at Tricert. I've been with Tricert and in the EUC space for over 20 years. In terms of kind of an array of user management and that end user computing technologies and the stack of technologies that are involved everywhere from the remote desktop platform down to these different individual management options. And obviously at Tricert, we're passionate and very focused on printing and scanning and that piece of the EUC puzzle. And as we'll go through here today, obviously printing isn't the only thing, but it's certainly a very important thing in the full range of IT services and making sure it's a managed, effective environment. And that's everything from networking and performance, the hypervisor, the remote desktop platform. But then when you get into user session management, printing is obviously a big piece of that. And when a user logs in, interacts with their applications and their data, there's a lot of elements to that user profile, and the printing component is certainly one that needs to be on par with the rest of the solution stack to make sure that you're maximizing the effectiveness of the services that you're providing as an IT admin, and then for your users that it's the most productive environment possible. So when we look at these goals or the general overviews, like I was just saying, in terms of optimizing the administrative tasks that you have without compromising the user experience, and that's the real balance that we're trying to get. Of course, it would be easy to optimize admin tasks by just saying no to everything and having a completely locked down environment. But oftentimes that's not really effective in terms of user productivity. So it has to be a balance of giving the user the full range of technologies and platforms that they need to do their job effectively, but not causing a massive administration overhead, not causing security issues. All of these things have to be in balance. And certainly as we look through these solutions, one element that we'll certainly consider is minimizing help desk calls. every time a help desk call is generated, that's time away from the user from doing their job that they're trying to do. And it's time not just from help desk staff, but usually escalated up into admins and the EUC admins that have other initiatives that need to be looked at. And so minimizing help desk calls automatically is time and money savings that's very valuable for organizations. So certainly enhancing that printing efficiency and that performance. And we'll look from login times to finding printers right away, all those different abilities to really fine tune the performance for users and the efficiency for admin, and really revolutionizing user satisfaction along the way, a very important piece to what we're offering here. So we'll go through 3 different examples, and I'll mix in some brief demos as well, just to kind of look at the more specifics of how this is done in a modern print management solution. So for healthcare, there's obviously a wide array of different environments that are out there in terms of healthcare, but there are some commonalities. A lot of times these healthcare environments have these multi-user endpoints. So where maybe a traditional corporate office might have one workstation per user, a healthcare environment oftentimes has shared endpoints. They might be virtual thin clients. We're partners with iGel and other thin client vendors in terms of being able to work with those systems as well. And so you have these environments where a doctor or a nurse or a hospital worker might be through the day moving through a building or different locations, and logging into different stations and these multi-use stations throughout the day. And so the printing becomes an important part of that patient care workflow. That has to be effective. That has to be right every time to make sure that when I walk into a room and I'm performing, the tasks that are necessary in that room, the technology and access to the system and printing should be in the background. It should just work. It should just be quick and effective, and so they can move on. Obviously, the focus in these environments are on patient care, not trying to get that print job out. So the more the IT admin can do to make sure that that's just a behind-the-scenes process that works every time, it's going to pay dividends down the road in terms of what can be provided. Frequent support for these various locations. And so the EUC environments, the remote connections, there are certainly laptops and desktops involved, but a lot of times in these environments, we see a much higher percentage of remote connections in the building in terms of like within the local data center or remotely from various locations into a central environment. And true in every business for sure, as far as security goes, but paramount in healthcare, you have to have always security and compliance concerns top of mind. And so printing is certainly part of that, both how it's managed, but also the management of the actual physical paper and output to make sure that it matches in with the overall IT infrastructure, so it's all cohesive and seamless together. So when we look at a modern print management solution like a Triceret screwdrivers, these are some of the things that we look at to solve these challenges and the issues that are first and foremost in a healthcare environment. And so when we look at advanced printing solutions, the foundational piece really is this built-in driver management for stability and simplicity. Driver management has been around since the dawn of personal computing. So it's been a thing for decades, obviously. And I've seen, there's certainly ways to do this by hand. I've seen elaborate scripts or group policies, and there's certainly ways to do it, but it always inevitably becomes very complex and time consuming to update or to fix if something goes wrong. And so having a built-in driver management solution, either with print servers or native print drivers within the database, and with print servers, then of course you can utilize a virtual print driver so that in a desktop or in a session, that virtual driver is the only thing that needs to be there, and you can save time from having to transfer drivers around or preload drivers into environments. It really makes everything much more effective. So the driver management aspect really is that foundational component that can immediately save time in terms of issues with the login process. It can save time in terms of help desk calls that are generated. Really, this is the key thing, to just have things working underneath the hood. And then, of course, faster access to printers and sessions. Straightforward assignments of printing out to users, to devices, and then self-service capabilities is an important piece of this as well. So all of this helps deliver the right printer to the user dynamically, quickly, and effectively, without a lot of hassle from the admin, which we'll see in a second. We talked about compliance and security. The intelligent print mapping certainly helps with that, to make sure the printer has, the user has the right printer at the right time in the session that they're using right now, so that it's not just like every printer under the sun, or me having to find a printer every time. When I go up to this workstation, I know that the right printer is mapped. I hit print, I see that I have the piece of paper in my hand right away. So that certainly helps reduce errors. From a technology standpoint, encryption is an important piece of this, being able to encrypt the data in motion through every step. And so when we go from the desktop and turn this into a print job and then transmit it to the print server, that whole transmission is encrypted during that process, to make sure that data is under control. And this is an internal solution that IT has full control over. Here we're talking about cloud desktops, and in healthcare, we'll see a mix of existing data centers, we'll see private clouds, we'll see public clouds, we'll see that whole mix, oftentimes in the same environments. But for the IT to be able to install these components in their desktops and have complete control over the print process, keeps it all within your environment, all within the scope of your network management, and make sure that security lines up exactly with all the other data management you have. It's really part of that end-to-end solution. And because security, of course, isn't just your network or just your access control or just your identity management. All these things work together, including printing, and making sure that the print output is just as secure as the other elements of the infrastructure. And then, of course, boosting productivity at the core here. Again, like I was saying earlier, making sure that every worker involved in the healthcare process is focused on their job. They're not IT. They're there to service, the customer and the patient. And so we're enabling that by boosting productivity for them. I do have an example, and this is an example. There's a link there that is on the TriCert website with a lot more information, a full PDF, and we'll also link to that at the end. But this particular example is a center for dialysis care. And so this particular healthcare provider has 30 different locations. So we see a wide range. Some are single hospitals, some are hospital systems with thousands of clients. In this case, more of a mid-size environment with 700 employees, but all these different offices around. So kind of an extra layer of management in terms of not just the number of employees, but the number of locations they're dealing with. The management issues that they addressed or had a need to address were within both Citrix and VMware environments. So Citrix being the remote desktop environment and VMware being the platform that this is all built on, and really dealing with unstable drivers and the difficulty of users moving between locations. Trying to do that by hand in the manual approach becomes very difficult as the number of locations and users grow. And so they went and we're looking for a way to modernize their print offering to make sure it fit in with the rest of their IT and EUC environment. And so by going to screwdrivers, really, like I said earlier on, the foundational piece, resolving those print driver issues and really streamlining the management for those drivers so that printers could be identified by the users. A lot of that was the assignments per location, which we'll look at here in a second. And then also ways that users could add printers in on their own. To visualize this a little bit, kind of a sample healthcare environment with a wide array of beds, printers, devices, and central VDI, and really layering TriCert screwdrivers into that VDI environment. In this case, it's really just getting it into that base image, and then instantly the users logging in to those VDI environments through the thin clients can have access to the right printers where they need to be. And so again, very often we'll see an environment where someone might walk up to an iGel endpoint, perhaps badge in within Imprivata or something similar, and then have that reconnected session and have screwdrivers build the correct printer dynamically in the new session for the endpoint that they're walking up to. They then leave that room, walk down the hall, walk into a different room, badge in there, and again, behind the scenes, they're reconnecting probably to the same remote session, but screwdrivers will dynamically pick up that it's a new session coming from a new client and reassign that printer to the right device. And so let me show quickly what that looks like. And in fact, I have, let me make sure my screen's up. Yep. So this is the screwdrivers administrator interface. And so we can see that we can browse. I have a couple print servers in here with printers that have already been queried. I have some direct IP printers in terms of printers that will print to without print servers. And I can see a view of the Active Directory to be able to assign printers to users or groups or really any object in the directory. We also have the ability to assign to network device. And so this is really what comes into play in these environments where I have a certain printer that I want to make sure is mapped into a session every time a user walks up to a given client or a given endpoint. And in fact, we have a program that can do a bulk import. This is quite commonly used in our healthcare environments. So it's basically a CSV import program. I've already defined one of these where I build out a couple clinics and workstation names that are at these different clinics and the printer that should be mapped to that workstation. And so I might have gotten this list from a desktop management part of my IT team. And so now within screwdrivers, we have a screwdriver CLI command line interface, and we can import that CSV file. Just like that, within a few seconds, it's now imported those things into the database. I can refresh the database here. And I added under network, clinic 1, 2, and 3 with the different workstations. And you can see if I then expand these different clinics, I can see the workstations involved. And within the different workstations, I see that printer are automatically assigned as the default printer for that workstation. So I named it workstation, but let's call it a thin endpoint. I walk up to that device, it's named WKST001, and I connect to whatever my remote desktop session might be, and wherever it might be, whether it's down the hall, in the cloud, doesn't matter. I now know I'm going to map this particular printer, which comes from a print server over here, and I have it ready to use in my session. So from an admin standpoint, I've now bulk import. I've done a bulk import of these of both the workstations and the assigned printers. And a user now has a dynamic management system so that when they walk up, they have the right printer immediately available to them. And then certainly, like I was mentioning, in terms of being able to mix that, so these printers are assigned per device, but I can also come in, browse the Active Directory. Right now, it's scanning through to get the information about my different OUs and groups and users so that I can browse, hopefully, browse through the AD. Again, this is not specifically changing anything in the AD. I'm just reading what's in there so that I can make an assignment. And so here, if I want to then assign perhaps a Zebro printer to myself, it's a drag and drop. I say yes, do an admin assignment, and now I have that 420 ZPL also assigned to me. So what really works great in this scenario is that it's combining the device I'm connecting from and also who I am. And so if I'm members of groups that might need certain printers, that needs, perhaps a certain work group printer, and I'm connecting from this local client, these things, all these assignments mesh in together. And so it's a cohesive way to manage all aspects of printing in the environment. The second example I want to look at is the hybrid work model. And so this is really, hybrid now is somewhat of a catch-all term. We have hybrid platforms, hybrid clouds, hybrid devices, hybrid work locations. And so in the ever-changing landscape of the style of work, we certainly still have mobility use cases where employees might be going from building to building or location to location. But also more often working from home as well, making sure that we integrate those capabilities in together, all in the same management system. So this might be where a home user is connecting in through a remote desktop, like a Citrix or a VMware Horizon or the various different technologies, an AVD desktop, for instance, or it might be something where they have a fat client, a laptop or a desktop at their house that they're connecting and using the applications there. So certainly in this case, where we're managing printers are really where the user sessions are, or sessions. And so I might have a local app, and of course, then I need print management there locally to print to my local app. I might have an app that's coming from the remote desktop data center, and I need the Screwdriver's agent there to make sure that I have that printer assigned also. It might be SaaS applications coming through a web browser. And again, wherever I'm launching that web browser from, I need to be able to have printers local to that browser to be able to print to. So by having these different locations that the agents can install and present print queues to those applications in those sessions, to the user, this all becomes a very seamless delivery method, because I am getting applications from different locations, but each one of those applications sees the same set of printers and has that same set of management of printers across all those environments. So really taking what can be a very complex environment in terms of the spread of the different places these IT services are coming from, but now you're back to a single pane of glass and a single management system that's comprehensive and consistent across all those environments. So really simplifying then the IT services, including printing. So again, some of the benefits of modern print management, that seamless integration I was just talking about, being able to provide that consistency across devices, across platforms. And platforms here, I'm more referring to, you might have some applications coming from a VMware environment, others from an AVD environment, others through SaaS and my web browser. So there's these different platforms, but it's also, I'm connecting from different physical or device platforms. So I might have Windows, I might have a Linux thin client, I might have a Mac. So it's different endpoints, it's different remote platforms, and it's different application types, all being meshed together for seamless integration, including with the print services. Of course, coming from home, I might have a printer at home that is completely outside the management realm of IT, but we still need to make sure that my local printing, when I connect into the remote corporate environments, if the IT admin allows, to be able to seamlessly map the client printer the same way I'm doing with network printing. And so all of that also becomes seamless and cohesive for the user, especially in those work from home. And more importantly, work from home and office. I might be doing both. That's a scenario that we have here at TriState, where some days I'm at home, some days I'm in the office, other times I'm traveling remotely. All those times I need to be able to have the same set and value of IT services. And to do that frictionlessly certainly is an important thing in terms of back to that driver management, back to the dynamic assignments of printers, and really just flexibility for the users to make sure that they're getting their job done. And we've already talked about data security, certainly the simplification of the print process and the encryption of the traffic, two things that are still important even in these scenarios, especially as data and print jobs might be leaving the data center. We want to make sure that we have as much control down the line of that process as we can until we hand it off to the end printing device. A scenario, another case study that's available on TriState.com, a insurance company here, if I remember right, from Ohio. I might have that wrong, but somewhere here in the U.S. And a hybrid environment, 8 office locations, 180 plus employees, and really a very diverse set of print models and drivers. Pretty much every printer in the environment was something different. Sometimes, you as an IT admin might be lucky and have standardization of one type of print model. Doesn't happen often. And in this case, it was the complete opposite. Everything was different, a mix of client endpoints, basically all those things that we're talking about before when we're dealing with these kind of hybrid environments. Now, they were facing print output and performance issues, and they actually looked at it. And before TriState Screwdrivers, they realized that between 15 and 30 minutes a day per user was being spent on just trying to do print management by the user. And so they looked at this and saw an opportunity for productivity and time enhancements, and cost enhancements. And so by deploying the modern print management and Tri-Cert screwdrivers, we're able to save that time, and estimated that they were saving $36,000 a year through the time and productivity savings. So certainly a tangible thing for them by just having a tool that effectively builds printers from the user side and gives from the admin side rather, and gives the users just the maximum productivity in terms of their compute session and their environment. So this is just a visualization of that, where a user might be at one particular branch office. And by installing, let's say this user has a laptop and they install screwdrivers, and now dynamically I know based on the subnet or some other element of the assignment that this is the printer for this location. And on my laptop now, the right printer builds for where I am on this particular subnet at this office. Tomorrow, I might be over at this other location, and screwdrivers can now, when I use it even locally, also be able to detect that and map that different printer. Now, if this was a remote application delivered from the cloud, let's say, the same thing can happen where based on where the client is connecting from, I'm now going to build the right printer, be it either a direct IP printer or through a print server that's available at these different client locations. So those would be the two different ways to get printing down to those locations. And we'll look at that again in the next scenario, which is cloud desktops. So let me demo a couple other things. One being the client printer assignments, and then also the self-service capabilities that we've talked about. So for client printing, in fact, I'll pull up Screwdrivers Printers, which is our the Tri-Cert Screwdrivers user-facing application. And so I can see here that as I've logged in, I've gotten printers from a variety of locations, including this Ricoh printer coming from this AParlette SLS. That's my laptop. And so I'm getting both corporate printers in the office, but I'm also getting printers that are local to my laptop. And so right now I'm in the office. I see both of these. If I were at home, I would connect and I would still see this local printer so that I could print to my printer at my house and get my print jobs where I am locally. So within the admin interface, we do have the capability to define settings for those client printers. So in this case, I have a configuration for work from home. There's a lot of different advanced capabilities in here, but I'll just highlight really simply the ability to say, let's add all the client printers, or quite often, this might be changed to add only the client's default printer. So if they happen to have a lot of printers in their printer list on their laptop, let's just add the one that's default, and then again, streamline it for the user, make it much more productive and easy for them. They log in, the default printer shows up, and they're able to print to it. The other thing I want to show here is the self-service capability. And so I can see a list of printers that are available to me. And from the admin perspective, when I drag and drop one of those assignments, I can choose to always assign it, meaning admin assigned, or I can give the user the permission to be able to add or remove it on their own. And this is how they would do that. Additionally, many of our customers have utilized this maps feature. So let's say I was traveling to the York warehouse and I was there. I needed to add this label printer to print something out from the shipping and receiving department. I can come into the map. I could identify where I am, including filtering this. So if it might be a larger office, a smaller office, a warehouse, whatever it might be, and I can see printers that I have access to. So it's not necessarily every printer on this map. I'm only seeing the ones that the admin has said that they're user allowed. And then I can come in, click add printer. It says, do you want to refresh? I say yes. And now in the background, this is refreshed. I have access to that printer. So this kind of self-service option, if you choose to use it, certainly gives the user that flexibility to then be able to manage their printing very easily through a very simple interface, but without generating a help desk call, while you still have control over the environment as the IT admin. Okay, and finally, The cloud desktop printing. And so for all of these different scenarios, certainly when we look at the environment of cloud computing today, certainly a growing relevance as more and more desktops are being delivered from different services. Now, these services might be private clouds, moved out of the data center, but still in a private deployed method. It could be some of the larger public clouds. There's also whether or not it's IT managed, meaning if it's managed by a provider, or if your internal team is maybe using the cloud resources but still managing the actual elements of that cloud. And of course, DaaS or desktop as a service, where you're getting a desktop that is managed from a third-party back-end system and then getting those desktops quickly and easily deployed to your users. In all of these scenarios, Tricert screwdrivers can layer in to the sessions that the users are connecting to and really do it cohesively of if applications are coming both from the cloud or local laptops, for instance, or maybe a local data center plus cloud. Commonly we're seeing environments not in mass moving all of their desktops to the cloud, but for those scenarios that make sense for deployment or expandability use cases. And so oftentimes, yes, there's this initiative to take advantage of the cloud and the advantages it offers. But then there's an extra layer of connectivity of, okay, I'm now remote connecting to applications that are even further away in terms of physical distance, or maybe a layer of management that I, as the IT staff, don't have full control over. And then from a user perspective, layering both my local applications or devices with these cloud managed services. And ultimately, there's this concept that printing is always on-prem. So when we talk about cloud printing, yes, we are managing the drivers and the access to the printers from the applications that are running in the cloud. But ultimately, there's this translation that always has to happen of getting the print job down to the local environment and printing out to a physical device that's sitting here next to me. That piece of paper that I can pick up off the printer and hold in my hand is what matters. And so in any print scenario, there's always going to be this translation from what's running in the cloud and what's moved to the cloud in terms of data and applications and desktop sessions, but then getting that print job moved and delivered to me locally. And so really print management becomes even more of an important piece of the framework as we look at these desktop cloud scenarios or cloud desktop scenarios, and how screwdrivers and modern print management can layer in and make that even more effective. So we talked about the managed print jobs. Still need that driver management. It's still a Windows session, most likely. It might be a Linux session, and we can manage CUPS printing in there as well. But if you're connecting to like an AVD environment, or perhaps a Citrix or VMware environment that has been relocated to a cloud or DaaS system, you're still needing, if it's a Windows application that needs to print, you still need the driver management behind it and making sure that works effectively, especially when you're talking about a remote environment or one that you might not have full control over the back-end system. And to be able to do that effectively is all about reducing IT overhead, still being able to give dynamic and intelligent assignments out with optimal efficiency. And this kind of modern print management, yes, you could go back to scripting or trying to do it yourself, policy objects, these things, but we all know how complicated those get very quickly. And the manageability becomes just a serious issue that is hard to overcome. Not to mention, you still have driver incompatibility or performance issues, performance in the session, even just the ability of users to change their own printing on the fly, all really make a difference to the amount of overhead that you have as an IT staff. And this is what we were talking about moments ago in terms of that seamless digital to print translation. You're both transmitting information from the cloud locally, but also from the digital realm out to the physical realm with an actual print job and a piece of paper coming out. In the end, that's what printing matters, is did the paper move? Did the paper come out? And is the print job correct? Again, it should be behind the scenes. It should be something that users aren't thinking about, but you as IT admins need to make sure that the groundwork and the foundations in place so that does work effectively. So let's use an example of an AVD customer. And I'd like to point out that so far, all of my demos have been from an AVD session, meaning Azure Virtual Desktop, a session running in the cloud. but managing a set of desktops in the cloud that connect to these local print services, and there's a few ways to do that. One of them being the cloud connector to optimize the way that the data flows to and from the cloud and also the security of the system. So let's take this example. I have on my left the local environment. I have a desktop. I have a print server that's still here, which could be very low powered. I mean, it could be a small one-off, Nook or small computer, or it could be something in a rack. Either way. And I have a local printer. In this case, a picture of a Zebra label printer. And I'm now connecting from my endpoint up into the Azure cloud to these AVD sessions, which might be multiple sessions on a single host, or as you scale up, multiple AVD environments. And I do have other things here in my Azure resource group, including Azure AD domain services or Entra ID domain services, and also capability for Azure SQL databases. Now, you might run a traditional SQL server in the cloud or managed SQL server. Any of these options are available to you as an admin. Commonly, if you're really deploying cloud services, you'll use the service version of the SQL database, which is fully supported by Screwdrivers as well. And then also other VMs that are accessible in the environment. Usually you'd have a subnet that ties all this together. So there is communication capabilities between the different components of the Azure environment. And now to layer the TriStar components on top of that, there is a print server agent that would be installed in that local environment. Nothing necessarily on the endpoint. Obviously, if we need to do client printing, I might have an endpoint there. But let's just say I have a basic thin client with that print server nearby. All I need locally is that agent so I can communicate the print jobs to it. Now, we've also installed the agent on the AVD. I show 4 copies of it here, but really it's just in that base instance. And then as other instances spin up, of course, the agent will be in there and ready, dynamically configured. And then we're utilizing the domain services. We're utilizing an Azure SQL database, and then a component that's installed to manage the licenses within the Azure environment. Now, in this case, I'm assuming a scenario where there is connectivity and bandwidth between the AVD, the Azure Resource Group and locally. This is common scenarios from what we've seen, having basically TCP redirection capabilities or addressability. So if the AVD desktop can reach through your private channels down to your local environment, great. And we can pass print jobs directly to the print server, encrypted across the WAN, deliver it as quickly, because it's also compressed as quickly as possible, ready to print out locally. So again, a user is leveraging applications that are deployed and managed in the cloud desktops, but then getting that print job delivered to them locally where they are physically. Now, in some cases, you don't have that IP connectivity. And so if that's the case, we do have a component that is a Screwdriver's gateway. In this case, I just put it on the same VM as my license server. Both of these are fairly low resource intensity. What the Screwdriver's gateway does is now my print server agent can connect from my agent up to the server. So it's like a reverse proxy technique, so that I don't have to open any firewall ports in my local environment. My local office stays secured. I have the service that's available in the Azure cloud, and then my print server can connect up to that. Similarly, the AVD session can connect to that Screwdriver's gateway, send any requests or print jobs to it, and then the Screwdriver's gateway knows this is the print server that needs the print job, sends it down through that link that's already established and gets it there to that local environment. So the Screwdriver's gateway and the cloud connector makes it possible to then leverage a scenario where I'm connecting into my Azure cloud without necessarily full IP connectivity back and forth. So we have that capability with that cloud connector. So let me just briefly show, like I said, the whole demo so far has been running on AVD. That's what this session is here. So it's an agent and the admin interface is installed there. I do want to briefly highlight what I spoke of. So this T print server is actually a using the cloud connector. And so we've defined a local internal connector. So that's what's running in the Azure cloud. And then similarly, we have the cloud connector on the print server, on this T print server, that's able to manage that connectivity. No ports were opened here on our network. Everything is accessed through the Azure cloud and the cloud desktops that are running there. So this is a way to have full IT managed control over the desktop sessions and the print environment running in the cloud, but effectively get the jobs back to the local environment. And like we talked about before, all of these layer into the same interface. So I can have different print servers, maybe print servers from the cloud or on-prem. I could have direct IP printers. I could have client printers. All of these different print types layer in together to have one effective solution that's given out to users quickly and easily. Oh, and the last thing here, we have reporting in the product as well. And so this is a screenshot of what we call Screwdriver's reports. Basically, with the reporting service, any print job that's passed through printers or any queues on the servers that have this print service will get logged to the database. So that might be a Tricert printer, it might be a Tricert managed printer, or it might just be a native queue that you have installed, like for instance, on a print server. This reporting service can go on a print server, it can go on a desktop, basically wherever there are print queues that you want to capture the information that's being sent to printers through those queues. And so this is an example of some charts that are built in terms of number of jobs by user, the different paper sizes, whether it was color and black and white. And so really getting you good actionable insight into the information that's being printed and how it's being printed so that you can evaluate if there are certain areas that perhaps need additional resources. Perhaps there's something where resources need to be scaled back in terms of specific users or job types. And so all of that information can be displayed from within these dashboard views. Just recently, Tricert announced the ability to do this as a standalone product. And so Screwdriver's Reports is certainly part of our Screwdriver's Enterprise offering that layers exactly onto all the other print management and modern management techniques that we have that we've talked about. But if you have a case where you want to add in this type of reporting into an existing environment by itself, that's certainly an option for you now. So please reach out to us if that's of interest to you, and we can talk about the Screwdriver's reporting solution that is now a piece of that Screwdriver's family of products. All right, so that's the presentation I have today. Just to kind of walk through very quickly, we talked about the foundation piece of effective driver management. This is still core. It was core 20 years ago when we invented screwdrivers and the virtual print driver. It's true today. You need good driver management really to make an effective IT solution out to your end users. But then you layer on the ability to do dynamic printer mapping, and especially within hybrid environments, taking things that are growing more and more complex and really simplify it, give a good, consistent interface, both for the efficiency of your administrators and consistent high-performance operations for your users, really driving towards productivity. And that's aided by self-service options and minimizing help desk calls to make sure printing just fades into the background. It shouldn't be at the foreground. It should be something that's just an underlying service that works. And modern print management solutions like Tricert screwdrivers are a key component of that solution stack to deliver that effectively to your end users. All right, if you have questions, I encourage you to reach out to us. One of the things that we really love to do is one-on-one consultations where we can go a little more in depth into a demo and show specific pieces, but more importantly, focus on what type of environments you're dealing with and how the solution would layer onto your existing environment, how you're running cloud desktops, or if you still have data center solutions or anything in between. This is a product that layers on that and can instantly make it more effective to both manage and operate for your users. We have tricert.com, and we will send a follow-up email to this for everyone who's registered with, for instance, links to those case studies that we talked about. But there's a lot more there on tricert.com, including an entire Tricert Academy, where you can see some more in-depth videos about how the solution works. My name, Andrew Parlett, and my LinkedIn's there. Certainly, I encourage you to reach out to me directly if there's questions that you have, and also our company LinkedIn page. And either there or on tricert.com, you can find the contact information where we have a team of engineers that, like I said, would be happy to take a look at specific scenarios that you have. So thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you found the content beneficial and ways that you can really apply this into an environment to further enhance the IT solutions that you're providing. Thank you so much.